Greetings, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It is such a pleasure to be here with these extraordinary leaders. We want to thank the WBC for having us, and we are looking forward to having this C-suite leadership in DEIB and corporate purpose conversation. I am Dr. Rachel Talton. I'm the CEO of Synergy International Limited, and we are an executive coaching, leadership development, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and consultancy. We've been around for 21 years, and it is a pleasure to be here. Alexis, why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Rachel, and thank you to the WBC. My name is Alexis Dennard, and I am the Assistant Vice President at AT&T for our Supplier Diversity and Sustainability, as well as our Mobility and Broadband Procurement. Look forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Reggie, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon, all. Reggie Humphrey from General Motors. I'm currently serving in the role of Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Operations. Been with the company 28 years and just glad to be here with the WBC, Dr. Rachel, and these brilliant fellow panelists to drive some real discussion and impact.
Yes, indeed. And Lori, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Lori Holt. I serve as the Chief Operating Officer for the Executive Leadership Council. We are focused on enhancing the experiences of African Americans in the C-suite and corporate board directors, and this strengthening the pipeline so we can have talent ready to seize these opportunities. Thank you.
Love it. I love it. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in. As we were saying in the meeting before the meeting, this is going to go very, very quickly. So I'll go ahead and start with you, Alexis. You know, we've been talking about corporate purpose and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Talk to me about, what does corporate purpose mean to you, and how does DEIB impact corporate purpose? And I'll go ahead and ask Reggie to answer the same question, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Again, I think this conversation is so critically important. When you think about DE&I, it is all around how we foster an inclusive environment across the ecosystem. When you think about our corporations, each of us come from very unique backgrounds. And so when you think about D&I and corporate purpose, I think it falls into several categories. One, when you think about D&I, it's about innovation. It is about how we enhance decision-making, candidly speaking. You know, when you bring diverse perspectives to things, you do bring different viewpoints, different ways and perspectives, the way we drive results, candidly speaking, when you think about corporate purpose and how we foster that through D&I. Also, too, it's around performance, but I think what's even most important is the market insights. D&I, when you think about how we build our business construct, the products and services that we offer, it should mirror to what we see out in our own customers and communities. And so that is critically important when you think about marrying your corporate purpose and why it matters and why DE&I is critical towards that. And then I would close with just a couple of things. One is the employee brand. People want to work where they know that D&I is important, right? When you think about, you know, Lori, you talked about recruiting talent and the importance of talent and the importance of cultivating and growing that talent. People want to work where people know that that is important to them. And I finally would say the social construct. Communities are at the essence of everything. And so when you think about your corporate mission and purpose and how you tie D&I into that, that ties directly back into the communities in which we live, serve, and work. So I think that that's how you bring D&I in when you think about your overall corporate purpose and mission.
Drop the mic.
That's hard to follow. That's hard to follow.
Did I drop it somewhere? Hold on, let me pick it up.
She dropped a hot mic.
She dropped the mic.
Let me see if I can pick
That's all right though, because Reggie, I know you're going to bring it home. Let me see
if I can pick up that hot mic. So, you know, for General Motors, right? We've had a long-standing history here, but you know, we've recently come up with an aspiration to become the most inclusive company in the world. Very aspirational. No different than our 000. We want to build a products and services and technology and software that will create a world where we have zero congestion, zero crashes, and zero emissions. We know that is not feasible, but we have to strive every day as our North Star to achieve that. So much like becoming the most inclusive company in the world, we know that that takes a lot. And so what I do is I kind of wrap up what's our drivers, and I kind of wrap it up into what I call my 4 C's. And it ties in very closely with what Alexis just said. It's your customers, right? And for us, we talk about WBC, women account for 40% of the purchases of vehicles. But guess what? They account for 85% of the actual decision-making power in a household
What I
to
was
buy a
about to
vehicle.
say.
So if you can't and do not pay attention and invest in women, and your workforce doesn't represent that, we've lost the game. So we think about first our customers, we think about our competition. If they're doing it well and we're not, we're losing in every form. Then we think about compliance. Compliance is not always a bad thing, right? To make sure that we're driving not just the economic inclusion, but also the behavior, more importantly, right? In your hiring practices. And the last thing I'll say is the culture. Your culture demands it. And to Alexis' point, no one wants to work for a company in 2023 and beyond that doesn't have a strong DEI, not just message, but actually has demonstrated practices, procedures, and policies that envelop that. So what I say is my 4 C's: customers, competition, compliance, culture. But you got to wrap it up what I call a big old burrito called consequences. And when we begin to tie the consequences of DEI, it's also the rewards, right? Then we will make advancements in corporate America.
Absolutely. You know what, Lori, I just feel like I know you have something to say. You know, Alexis and Reggie have really brought it home. So if you wouldn't mind, just share with us, what does corporate purpose mean to you?
So, it's very easy to think about, businesses exist to make profits and money. But when I think about corporate purpose, it encompasses the broader goals and values that guide a company's actions and decisions. A purpose statement typically outlines, here's our commitment to making a positive impact on society, the environment, and other stakeholders, in addition to generating profits. So that's what corporate purpose means to me.
I love it. I love it. Excellent. So how is your company implementing and supporting and implementing diversity, equity, inclusion? Now I'm going to get a little bit tactical here, right? So I want you to think about some of the tactics, and not just across sort of talent management and acquisition, but also supplier diversity. Alexis, Reggie, and Lori talked about our communities. How are we tying all of this together in terms of our communities as well? And I'll go ahead and start with, let's go ahead and start with Lori and backwards this time.
Absolutely. Well, at the Executive Leadership Council, it's not hard. Now, although our specific focus is around African-American talent, when we talk about it, it is very easy to be comprehensive in the message. So we start with having inclusive leadership and making sure that our partners are focused on being inclusive. If your CEO and C-suite isn't at the table, at least having a conversation about it, it makes it very difficult for you to be on the bandwagon with the ELC. So again, we are driving inclusive leadership. We lead by example. We embrace diverse perspectives and ensuring equitable opportunities for all. I'll also say equity and access and advancement. So not only within the organization, but we are proponents and out in the marketplace in all of our leadership and development training. All of our members hear the same message, where we're making sure that we are driving the process to eliminate systemic to advancement within our organization and the organizations in which we serve. And then the last thing I'll leave with is empowering voices. We actively seek out and elevate the voices of the underrepresented through the work that we do. We provide platforms for the employees to share their experiences, perspectives, and ideas, and we listen and act upon the input.
I love it. I love it. All right, Reggie, talk about how tactically, and you are in the supplier diversity. You spent a lot of years doing supplier diversity, as have you, Alexis. Talk to me about tactically. How do you do this?
So I'll chime in briefly on supplier diversity, because that's the role I left, right? I spent about 10 years leading that activity, and very proud. GM was the first automotive OEM, original equipment manufacturer, to have a supplier diversity program, just like we were the first to start a dealer diversity program and a women's retail network. So I want you to think about this, right? We started that in 1968, but why are we still dealing with some of the same issues when it comes to supply chain inclusion, when it comes to the dealership experience for women, for people of color? Because that's why there's still a need for us to be in these spaces, right? We have got to be very deliberate. When it comes to supplier diversity, you got to have strong tier 1 targets and consequences for not meeting those targets. You got to have tier 2 targets. We have to make sure that the diverse suppliers that we wrap our arms around through not only sourcing opportunities and also supplier development activities, but then what are they doing within their supply chains to open up doors for the tier 2s, the tier 3s? You got to be real deliberate. So again, we all know if you don't measure it, it doesn't matter. So the metrics have to be clear, and supplier diversity metrics, just like talent metrics and every other DEI metric, has got to be a part of C-suite scorecards that actually draw to the bottom line when it comes to performance reviews that says, did you get it done? Did you get it done with the talent? Did you get it done with the people? Did you get it done with the any other element that you would like to measure? For us, philanthropy is another area, but I'll toss it over to Alexis to kind of shuttle that one down.
Bring it home.
Yeah, she'll bring it home.
Listen, I appreciate every aspect of what you said, because I would say amen corner to a lot of what you've already articulated. But when you talk about, Dr. Rachel, some of the tactics pieces at AT&T, it's not just a slogan of supplier diversity, it's truly living our values. AT&T actually was one of the first in the nation to have a supplier diversity program. And over that time, it has truly evolved. And I think that the core element of it is just beyond the spend. It is frankly about economic empowerment. You change lives when a diverse supplier, a woman, is able to do businesses and services with a corporation. That is generational. That drives, and we think about the jobs that creates. Last year, AT&T equated almost 430,000 jobs. Of that, 220,000 were directed to women. Yeah. And if you think about what that means in terms of leadership, in terms of impacts into the community, it drives deep in that. And so when you talk about the tactical pieces of it, we are a team. It's not just one or two people that are trying to drive and influence that change. I lead a team of professionals who work in conjunction with our procurement teams, who work with our business units to really understand strategy, understand what's taking place in the business landscape, because at the end of the day, it's about solving solutions, business solutions, for not only us internally, for our customers, and to be able to have a unique seat to help suppliers work, cultivate, mentor, and grow. To grow and do business with AT&T is such a mission, and it's a blessing. So I think you've got to have at the core the value proposition of understanding your corporate purpose and the value that diverse suppliers bring, women bring to the marketplace and to solving solutions. And so that's all I would add when you think about it from a totality perspective in supplier diversity. It is an honor to be able to marry all of that goodness with the mission of service, because that's at the end of the day what it is. It's about the service and a heart of service towards our suppliers.
And Dr. Rachel, I could add just one more tactic. When do we actually measure the health of these diverse suppliers? The health of our diverse dealers?
Hold on, don't take us to church, Reggie.
Because this is when we begin to start to look at their profitability, the number of requests for quotes that they receive, the terms of their contract life cycle. Like, it's not about spend. It's not about the number of suppliers. You got to get into the depths of how healthy is this supplier. When will those contracts expire? And what is the natural attrition of that business with our company? Because now, going back to the jobs that Alexis talked about, they're directly dependent upon that contract life cycle, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows. Which programs or services did you put them on? Did you put them on the healthiest ones where we're selling products every day? Or did you put them on the soft market stuff that goes away once the pandemic hits and other things? So this is where, if you're going to get deep into the tactics, you got to go deeper than some of those superficial metrics.
Okay. And I think supplier diversity is more than just a program. It is an operational strategic approach towards how you solve business solutions. And I love what Reggie said. It is about some of the sustainability in that, in those efforts, as part of it.
Yeah. So, as one of those diverse supplier, hello, right? Hi. We've been around for 21 years, and we have the pleasure of serving some of the world's top brands: Amazon, AWS, Toyota. Sorry, Reggie. Mars.
Our loss.
Well, again, next year. But there are, the most valuable partners that we have, and I'm going to say partners, not just customers, partners that we have are concerned about everything that you all have said, because they know that when I go hire, I hire women and minorities. We hire all across the board, but the health of our communities depends on people that look like all of us. So very important.
I'm sorry, Dr. Rachel, I do want to chime in on one of the things you asked in your initial question in terms of tactics, not only across supplier diversity, but the community aspect. At AT&T, when we think about bridging the digital divide, it is a more collective approach when we think about underserved communities, when we think about how we want to educate up the next workforce. And we have, when you talk about partners, in our journey with this, we have diverse suppliers who are coming along on our journey in terms of the connected learning centers that we're opening across the country. So diverse suppliers can help solve bigger than just business solutions. They can help be a support and partner in the community when you talk about, Reggie, the philanthropic sides of what we do as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, I haven't always been in the nonprofit sector. When I spent time many, many years in the healthcare space, one thing that I would offer to those who are participating in hearing this call is to make sure that even if you can't figure out a space to fund us or award us a diverse supplier, do some type of programming that prepares those individuals to be even a better business. They're only doing what they know how to do. And I think that as I have analyzed the workforce, you have more, especially diverse talent who is exiting corporate America and going off and starting their own things as entrepreneurs. And so it behooves us not only to hire them or award them contracts, but prepare them so they can be competitive vendors when those bids come up. So I would just offer that was, something that we practiced in another life that I lived in, but it really helped a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And Dr. Russell, if you would give me just a second, I want to connect a tactical dot with my sister Lori. So when you talk about deliberate tactics, right? We talked about preparing folks. Well, if I look at GM and I look at our African-American population, the ELC is a critical partner for us when it comes to developing that talent, right? Because I can't tell you how many times when we actually send a group to the mid-level managers symposium, that is the best and brightest of mid-level managers that GM has to offer. But here's what happens. Through the nomination process, they get entire visibility across the organization. Who was the top Black talent in the company that's getting nominated for this ELC? They don't even know what ELC really is. But then what happens is they come back from ELC. They talk about the experience. They talk about the growth. Now that becomes a pivotal part of our professional development underneath our DEI umbrella. So again, a quick tactic, but it connects the partnership. It connects the investment in the employees, which then we believe is actually helping to retain as well as attract, because the ELC, other corporates that are there are like, what's GM doing over there? How many people did you send, right? So that's one of those quick tactical moments that within the DEI landscape, when you talk about preparing a workforce, like that's a partnership that no one can go without.
Absolutely.
And I can testify as someone who went through that midlife. Absolutely.
And just to add a little bit to what you've said, Reggie, everything that you're talking about impacts our communities, because we know that talent management and all of this stuff has to do with education and transportation and, to Lori's point, healthcare and all of those things. So it is a recursive cycle that you are feeding, that ELC is feeding, that General Motors is feeding, that AT&T is feeding.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 10 minutes left, and we know that
we can talk about that one all day long.
I know. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to ask you two more questions before we wrap up. So I want to know, what is your vision for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, including the currency of trust? As you know, I'm one of the foremost practitioners globally in trust. Trust is critical. Employee engagement. Going into 2024, looking at the political headwinds that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is facing. I'm going to ask you, all three of you, to just go ahead and speak to this, because I don't even know who to choose. Everybody's got so much goodness to share. So I'll start with you, Lori.
This one, I really, when we talked and we prepped, and I give this a lot of thought with there's, SCOTUS rulings and everything that's going on. And it's something that we are consciously aware of every day at the Executive Leadership Council. So here's what I will share. My vision as we embark upon the political landscape is that we collaborate with like-minded organizations, and we engage in constructive dialogues with policymakers to advocate for DEIB principles at not only global levels, but local and national. In my vision, the political headwinds serve as just a backdrop, but they don't deter our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Instead, I want them to motivate us to be even more resolute in our pursuit of a fair, inclusive, and just workplace and society. And I think by doing all of this, we believe we can contribute positively to the world and inspire others to do the same. And we can transcend this political challenge that is ahead of us.
Mhm.
There's so much. Amen, amen, and amen. Okay, Alexis, and then we'll have Reggie bring us home.
Can we just do cut and repeat? And then
Right.
I think it was the drop the mic moment right there. I think you're absolutely right. You don't get to this place as a corporation such as AT&T if you're not committed to it, DEI and B. And I think that mission still stays focused towards that. I think what is important, and I love what you said, Dr. Rachel, it's the trust. It is the trust, being trusted advisors in terms of how we approach DE&I. And I think it's to Reggie's statement around how do we hold ourselves accountable towards that, not only externally, but internally, because trust really fosters with our employees. And it really, at the core, is our values. And if you stay tried and true to who that is, AT&T is a global corporation. And if you stay tried and true to what that is, not that it's always easy, right, but you stay focused, because there's always going to be noise in the channel, no matter where you are, whether it's supplier diversity or we're in the community or whatever that looks like. I think we have to stay focused in terms of what is our mission and purpose towards when we think about DE&I. How do we set up the right programs of exposure? To Reggie's point, what are we doing internally to make sure that we retain and attract the best talent? How are we exposing individuals associated with the things that we can control, right, as leaders in our own spaces, in our business? And that, I believe, the trust equation will drive our efforts and activities that others will see. And so I think it's staying focused and not letting the noise drive and move you back and forth towards what you believe, because if your value principle is solid, you will do the right thing associated with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My goodness. Okay, Reggie.
No
pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Okay, so let me try to do this really quickly. So number one, when I think about DEIB, right, I always talk diversity. It's nothing more than the data, but you got to follow the data and show you where it leads you. Equity is the hard part. That's where you really got to dive into fair and impartial. By definition, the process, procedures, the systems, these are the systematic issues that we have got to attack, and you cannot be scared of them, right?
That's right.
You have to have a balance, right? We got a lot of people talking about woke corporations, but you have to have a balance between what's right and what's real, okay? The inclusion and belonging, that's our behaviors. We have a choice to make here every day. And I think that all it takes is for you, right, to put down whatever barriers, biases you have, and just think about the last time you were treated unfairly. Think about the last time you were put in isolated mode. Think about the last time where you, and if you've never had that happen, well, God bless you. But it doesn't take any race, gender, sexual orientation to figure out what the inclusion and behavior and belonging really feels like. So I got my own little acronym for trust. And Dr. Rachel, you could take this one to the bank and get cash.
Taking notes.
It takes time to build a
Mm,
relationship through understanding, sharing, and testing each other.
Mm.
And if we do that, that's how we're going to build trust, right? But again, you
wow.
got to take some time to build these relationships, understand one another, share, and then we got to test each other. And to me, keeping resolute in those commitments and realizing, why did we do this in the first place? And guess what? Who's giving up something for us to be equal and for things to be equitable? And I think if we face that hard question with folks, like, what are you giving up for me to be?
It was so prophetic.
That was a good word. That was a good word. That's why that happened.
Oh my gosh.
He's coming back.
Okay.
He's got it. He's got
Oh,
it.
okay, he's back. He's back. That was an awesome acronym. That was an awesome acronym again. So when we do part 2, we're going to start with your acronym, Reggie, and go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and get to our final question, because I really want to make sure that each one of you has an opportunity to really share what is your call to action for our 2,500 viewers that are watching this presentation at this moment. And we thank you so much for your attention. And we've had fun, but we have shared some real knowledge with you today. I want you to share, what call to action do you have for those organizations, corporations, nonprofits, and governments that are looking to drive diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging and their corporate purpose? And we'll go ahead and start with Reggie, since he was cut off last time.
I'll probably get cut off again. Somebody must have known I was about to say something. No. Just be intentional, right? We have got to be very intentional about connecting all of our DEI efforts to the corporate initiatives, the profitability, the customer experience. Be intentional about connecting the dots between your effort and the business results every day. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Call to action, be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Alexis.
Oh my gosh, I could list about 800 different things, but I'll boil it down to probably 3 real quick. One is, you got to have a strategy. DE&I can't happen in a vacuum. You have to be extremely intentional around its purpose and mission and how it lays seed in your overall strategy. And that is the KPIs and how you measure and all of the key things associated with. But I also would say too, you've got to communicate the progress. If you don't have it today, start somewhere and then communicate what you're doing in the goodness and the space of it, so that people can connect and understand what's happening with that. And then I also think you've got to empower and engage people at all levels. It can't just be at the bottom. It can't be at the top. It's got to be intentional. When Reggie talks about that, across every level, in hiring decisions, as you think about your talent pool, in resources, and how you say how we're going to construct a program that's really going to foster those types of things. I think those are probably the 3 things I would take away from an action perspective.
All right. So you have to have a strategy, ensure that you're engaging across the organization. And I will say also in the middle. We so often forget that very important middle, and make sure that you are talking with people, with individuals across the organization and across those strategic touch points. All right, Lori, bring it home, my soror, my sister. This has been so much fun.
Oh my goodness, it has been. Here's what I will leave. I have 4 points of context. Hold each other accountable. It is all of our responsibility to take a step in the right direction towards DEIB. Ask questions, demand transparency, and provide feedback so we stay true to purpose. I ask for you to collaborate. You don't know all the answers. The best teams are built and designed by diverse backgrounds and schools of thoughts.
Mhm.
Embrace that power of diverse teams and innovate solutions by being in that collaborative environment. Support beyond the workplace.
Mhm.
The easiest way to practice something and to put it into an everyday, like non-thinking activity is when you practice it not only in the workplace, but in everything that you do with your children, with your spouse, with your family. Be diverse. You don't have to look different, or you don't have to be anything different to respect a difference. And then share your impact. Sometimes I think the more we celebrate and share what we're doing and what's going on, it gets contagious and somebody else wants to join the crowd. So just by saying together, we can turn everything we do into a force for positive transformation, fostering an inclusive culture where every individual feels valued.
Mhm.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. The only thing that I would add is that we have to trust each other, and we have
Yes.
to be trustworthy in order to do that. So I would say each and every day as you go out into the workplace, be that trusted advisor.
Yes.
Trust those around you.
Mhm.
This has been incredible. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for allowing me to do my God job in such wonderful and graceful company. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Rachel.
Dr. Rachel.
Thank you, Dr. Rachel. It's been amazing. Thank you,
Has
WBC.
been.
Thank you, WBC.